Hey everyone, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going to go over the Enhance Shaman changes coming to you in the pre-patch, which will redefine the Enhancement Shaman for Shadowlands. Enhance Shaman is one of the most altered classes and specs, so it's good to give you an overview of what's changing from a skills, talents, rotation, and overall in general coming at you in the pre-patch and for Shadowlands. I recommend you check this out for what to do for your rotation, as things will be quite different. You've lost a lot of abilities, there's been a lot of new talents, there's been a lot of new things, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. First things first, in Shadowlands, there's a bit of a change. Number one, if you look at your class, like I'll go be on the PTR right now, you now have in your spellbook your Shaman abilities and your Enhance abilities. Your Shaman abilities are going to be across your entire class. That means Enhance, Ellie, Resto, they'll all have pretty much the same abilities, with some exceptions that they change, but in general, this is something that you don't have in BFA. In BFA, it's just your Enhancement Shaman tab. And this is really cool, actually. This brings back the class identity, not just the spec identity. So if we look at what things are now across all the Shamans, there's some new additions that particularly impact an Enhanced Shaman. Number one, you got Chain Lightning, which you'd be like, why are you going to cast that? And I'll tell you. If you haven't been paying attention to what's going on in the beta or in the Shadowlands changes, I'll give you the recap, don't you worry. Chain Lightning, number one. You get Flame Shock. Oh, I thought that was just Allie and Resto. Well, guess what? Enhance has it now as well. You have Chain Heal. Chain Heal is another ability that I don't know if you're going to be using it that much, but at least it's across the class. You might be able to use it to maybe heal your friends in case of some issue. Flame Tongue weapon, yeah, it's not Frostbrand. Remember, or it's not Flame Tongue Frostbrand buffs anymore. This is now in a weapon imbue that when you press it, it buffs your weapon for 1 hour, increasing the fire damage that's done with your melee attacks. Otherwise, you now have Frost Shock instead of Frostbrand. This is just a shock, and it shares the same cooldown as Flame Shock, so keep that in mind. You have Healing Stream Totem. This is a 15, it heals you for about 20% of your health over 15 seconds. It's on a 30-second cooldown, similar to a rogue potion that they have to heal yourself. Passive healing, we kind of like that. Can also help your group in case that, big AoE damage is going out. Maybe this can at least give a helping hand. You also have Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt, you might be like, oh, I knew that. We had that. It's different now. We'll get into that in a little bit. Lightning Shield. Lightning Shield is used to be a talent in BFA, and now it is just a general buff for all Shamans. But particularly for Enhance, it's a little special. Melee attackers have a 100% chance to suffer 35 damage. Yeah, that's not a lot. And have a 50% chance to get a stack of Maelstrom Weapon. Again, we'll talk about what Maelstrom Weapon is in a minute, but that is the core rotation buff that you're going to be getting now. Because they did remove Maelstrom Weapon Maelstrom resource as a builder spender for Enhanced Shaman. Now you have something else. We're getting right to that, don't worry. Otherwise, that's that. All these are pretty much the same as you've seen before, and that's it. So those are the ones, and the main ones I'll call out are Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, and Flame Shock, Frost Shock. These will be augmenting your rotation now, and we'll get to that here in a second. So that's it for the general Shaman changes. Let's go ahead and look at the Enhanced Shaman specific changes, because these are a big deal. Let's go ahead and start with Maelstrom Weapon stacks. Okay, Tiqqle, you said Maelstrom Weapon resource, or Maelstrom is no longer a resource. What does that mean? It means quite a lot. It means the rotation is based off something totally different. It's called Maelstrom Weapon Stacks. It's when you deal damage with a melee weapon, you have a chance to gain Maelstrom Weapons, which is a buff, stacking up to 10 times. Each Maelstrom Weapon stack reduces the cast time of the next healing or damage ability by 20%. And when a maximum stack of 5 can be consumed at a time. So you can get up to 10 stacks, but when you use, like, let's say, an instant cast, because you have 5 stacks, Lightning Bolt, it will spend only 5. Okay, just keep that in mind. You can get up to 10, but you can spend 5 at a time. So that means you could potentially store 2 full casts of instant casts. And you might notice right away, this will be based on your haste and some other things about how many times you're able to generate Maelstrom Weapon. So this is a really big deal, and this changes Enhancement Shaman completely. Now we really have to get that melee uptime, and it's your melee hits and some of your other abilities, right, that will generate these Maelstrom Weapon stacks so that you can use it on instant casts. So now you can use Lightning Bolts and Chain Lightnings for AoE as a dump of these stacks. And when you spend them, it's actually going to do something else. So with this being said, if we go back to Chain Lightning, if I get up to 5 Maelstrom stacks, I can do an instant cast Chain Lightning. Well, why would I? Like, okay, I'll do that. Well, actually, if you read the second paragraph here, if Chain Lightning hits more than one target, each target hit by your Chain Lightning increases the damage of your next Crash Lightning by 20%. Oh, well, now you're going to Chain Lightning to buff your Crash Lightning. Your Crash Lightning buffs your Storm Strike, and your Storm Strike will help generate more Maelstrom Weapon. You start to get this cycle and a pretty interesting rotation for the Enhancement Shaman in an AoE situation. It's actually pretty fun, honestly, I think. So, because you're not just spamming Storm Strikes and using Crash Lightning to make them cleave, you're doing that, but you're including some casts in there as well. So that is really cool. Now, that is really the crux of the Enhancement Shaman now. The two other things I will bring up is, again, you do have Weapon Imbues. Weapon Imbues are brought back. They were in the game previously. You have Wind Fury, as well as Flame Tongue, which I mentioned earlier. But Wind Fury is kind of the quintessential Enhancement Shaman buff. Imbue your main hand weapon with the element of wind for 1 hour. Each main hand attack has 26% chance to trigger 2 extra melee attacks or hits, dealing 72 physical damage each. Now, yes, that is not as much as a normal melee, but these extra procs, what they actually help you do is they help you proc more Storm Strikes and do a little bit more damage. So this is really cool, and this is something that used to be in the game as well. So you have that buff, you also have your Flame Tongue, and you get those on. Now, you might have already seen it here. You do have Wind Fury Totem now. Wind Fury Totem is back. It does say 10% on the PTR, but on beta, trust me, it's 20%, but it's summon a totem at your feet. Party members and raid members within 30 yards have a it's going to be 20% chance when the beta comes, when we hit Shadowlands, 20% chance when they auto attack to gain an extra attack, like an extra melee. And it's hard to quantify how much this contributes to your overall melee DPS, but it's going to be useful. And if you think about it, if a rogue gets buffed by Wind Fury Totem, this means they're going to hit another melee, which could apply another poison. Or a warrior, it's going to get another melee, more rage. It not only gives them more damage, but it actually makes their rotation maybe more fluid and more fun. More things can happen with that. So this is a pretty interesting one, and I think this will give Enhancement Shamans a slot in the raid. I do believe that. Not only that, but Enhancement Shaman is doing particularly well in damage from what I've seen. Other than sub-rogues, they don't get beat by a whole lot right now. The mastery is exactly the same, increasing the damage of your fire, frost, nature spells, which is actually even better now, more valuable, because now we're going to be Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and using our Frost Shock, Flame Shock slot. And we're almost to the rotation. We're almost there. So that's that. Earth Shield actually did get buffed. This is actually going to increase. This is a talent, but this actually is a change. It increases the healing received by the shaman on the target with the Earth Shield by 20%, up from 10%, which is nice to see. It's not exactly a defensive fix for us shamans, but it's not bad. So with that being said, those are pretty much the skill changes. The only other thing I'll say is you don't see Rockbiter here. That was removed from the game. You don't need it as a filler. You have other abilities now, like your shocks, that are going to be your fillers. Your Frost Shock is going to be pretty much your last resort in terms of rotation, unless you're going a particular build, which we'll get into. But otherwise, that's your core shaman abilities. That's that. Talent changes are pretty aggressive, honestly. There were a lot of talent changes on almost every row. So what we see here, and I've put lines through all the ones that have been removed, Lightning Shield was removed. It was made a baseline skill. Hot Hand and Forceful Wind switched places. Boulder Fist and Landslide were replaced with new talents because Rockbiter's gone. Totem Mastery is out of the game for LA and Enhance. And if you guys want to see Enhance and resto my reviews of those as well, let me know. This is almost like a Shadowlands prep as well as a pre-patch. Now, the entire 60 tier was entirely reworked, as well as Fury of Air removed. Ascendance was also reworked, and we'll get into that. But let's go ahead and just go through the talents. I'm going to go through it quickly. If you guys want me to go through an even more in-depth guide, I don't want to just read the talents to you. I'm going to let you know what I think is useful, right? So they added Elemental Blast. That's actually pretty useful in PvP because it's a single target kind of good damaging ability compared to Forceful Winds. Forceful Winds still is kind of hard to maintain and get up to that 5 stacks to increase your Wind Fury damage, but it is what it is. Lashing Flames will increase if you Flame Shock a target, which you will be doing in single target as another way to do damage over time. Lashing Flames, if you Lava Lash that target, it will increase the damage of that Flame Shock by 100%. This could be a pretty viable option. Now, this next tier of the new talents is Storm Flurry. Storm Flurry is a pretty cool ability. I run this pretty much all the time at this point, and is like the preferred option on this row unless you're going for a Lava Lash build, or Hot Hand build. But Storm Strike has a 25% chance to strike the target an additional time for 40% of normal damage. This effect can chain off of itself, meaning if I Storm Strike once, it could mirror multiple Storm Strikes afterwards. I haven't really seen it do a ton of damage, but it does add additional pressure. So I like this one quite a bit. And because a lot of us are Storm Strike spammers from BFA, and we might even love that playstyle, this kind of adds in and is like, all right, you hit the Storm Strike. hit the Storm Strike. After that, this 30 tier is the same. I already talked about her shield. The 35 tier is completely new. I'm going to start with the least useful, which is Fire Nova. Unfortunately, guys, Fire Nova, basically any Flame Shock target, if you press the Fire Nova button, which is on a 12-second cooldown, will pop into an AoE circle around it with fire damage. I'll show you what that looks like here, but I'm sorry that I don't think it's going to be quite that viable because it just doesn't do that much damage compared to the other options. So if I put it on those two targets, I can press and it pops. It's great, but it doesn't spread Flame Shock, and it doesn't do a lot of things that we really needed to do to make it competitive. So back to the other talents. Hailstorm. Hailstorm, each melee, each stack of Maelstrom weapon consumed increases the damage of your next Frost Shock by 35% and causes your Frost Shock to hit an additional target. This is our AoE. This is going to contribute to our AoE rotation and AoE build. So what does that really mean? Well, what I need to do is I need to go ahead and get my Maelstrom weapon stacks up there. I have 3 stacks right now. All right, so we're at 5 stacks. When I spend Maelstrom, like I'll use a Lightning Bolt, right? I can use Instant Cast Lightning Bolt, and then that gives me this buff. That hit's going to hit 5 targets. So now, if I make sure I'm in combat with that, right, what I'll do is I'll press Frost Shock. It didn't hit that one, but it would have if it was closer. But yeah, it hit up to 5 targets with the Frost Shock, and that Frost Shock will actually do pretty decent damage. I did 1.2k, but it will actually do pretty good damage, and this is the build that you'll go likely if there's like some spreading out of mobs and you want to be cleaving or doing AoE. Now, it's not quite as good in my opinion, and not as fluid, I should say, as the last option here, Elemental Assault. This is Storm Strike damage is increased by 15%, and Storm Strike now generates 1 stack of Maelstrom, which is pretty awesome, because as you already know, stacking Maelstrom is a big part of Enhanced Shaman now. So every time I Storm Strike, I'm going to be getting that proc. So what I want to do, I want to make sure, see if I can cleave them both. Yep, crash landing. So now I'll click that off. If I Storm Strike once, I get multiple stacks, because if I hit multiple targets with Storm Strike, it's generating them pretty well. So now I'm up to 7 with just 2 Storm Strikes, right? And also the melee hits, right? So now I can spend my Maelstrom and keep pumping. It definitely allows me to have a bit smoother rotation than if I was Hailstorm, but Hailstorm does do really good AoE damage as well. It really does. So there are certain builds in Shadowlands where you'll go Hailstorm, like in the Mythic raid testing, and I'll put the video below. I was using Hailstorm and Earthen Spike to do my main rotation. But I personally, for Mythics, I really enjoy Elemental Assault. For PvP, I really like Elemental Blast, Storm Flurry, Elemental Assault. So, you know, that's that. And I do like the fact that it's buffing Storm Strike. That's our main hitting ability, and I want it to hit pretty hard. Another quick note is that in the pre-patch, there aren't legendaries, but in Shadowlands, there will be. And the #1 legendary in my mind right now is one that I'll put it on this Legacy of the Frost Witch, which, consuming 5 stacks of Maelstrom, which is part of your main rotation, resets the cooldown of Storm Strike and increases the damage by 100%. So now you got that 100% along with this 15%, along with Storm Flurry. It starts to feel pretty juicy. So I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. Stormkeeper is a new talent. This is charging yourself with lightning, causing your next 2 lightning bolts and chain lightnings to deal 150% increased damage and be instant cast. Now you might say, hey, that's Ellie. It's actually a little bit different. #1, it doesn't overload. Ellie, Stormkeeper, has a 100% chance to overload, meaning if I do 1 lightning bolt, it'll mirror it with my overloaded version. The other is that this buffs your chain lightning by 150%. Ellie's does not buff the chain lightning. So with this in mind, it actually is quite nice for AoE. The only thing I'll say is, because as you already now know, this Maelstrom weapon stacking, it's actually quite, it's kind of weird. The way that it works, I just pressed it. It's usually a cast. It will actually consume my Maelstrom weapons to be able to cast it. And the other thing is, as you know, every time I get a Maelstrom weapon stack, it increases my damage by up to 100%. That will actually affect my Stormkeeper bolts. So what I need to do, and this is, I'm gonna stop right there. If you want to know more about how to use Stormkeeper and how it scales with your Maelstrom weapon damage, let me know down below in the comments. That's going to be an entirely different video. It's pretty finicky, and I recommend going Sundering until you kind of get the feel for it. Now, the only other change is Descendants. They will be changing Elemental Spirits, and they did say they were going to fix Feral Wolves to be a little bit more impactful, which we hope they do. But the last one's Ascendance. Now, Ascendance, if I go up here and I press Ascendance, it's actually going to do an AoE pulse. You ready? Pulse. And we look the usual beautiful self, but basically you still have your wind strikes. It still works the same way that you know that it does, right? and doing big damage. But anyway, guys, that's the talent changes. There's been a ton of changes, and it's very exciting. I hope that that walkthrough helps you understand what the frick is going on. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the rotation. And now, as I mentioned, if you go, this is kind of my preferred build for Mythics right now, and is kind of the straightforward build in my mind. If you go Hailstorm, it's a little bit different. I'll show you. But basically, now, what I would do in my rotation is I'd make sure I have my my lightning shield on, my buffs on my weapons. I would go in and I drop Wind Fury before the pull. I would go in, I'd Flame Shock as I run up, and then I want to be using Storm Strike, Lava Lash, and Crash Lightning. Those are my 3 melee abilities. You can see them down in the bottom left. I want to put them on cooldown all the time. Mainly because they're now cooldown based, you can just use them non-stop. Prioritizing Storm Strike, Lava Lash first, and using Crash Lightning before I Storm Strike if I can, especially in cleaving situations. Now, those are my 3 melee abilities. That's it. You don't have any more. You don't have Rock Biter to spam. So what are your fillers? Well, if I don't have any Maelstrom weapon stacks and all my melee abilities are on cooldown, I'm going to be using my Frost Shock or my Flame Shock. Those will be my filler abilities, just so you know. And luckily, they are at range. So if I'm moving or whatever, I can always use those to keep the momentum going. Now, other than that, what else am I doing for my rotation? Well, as I get these Maelstrom weapon stacks up to above 5, I need to be dumping them. I need to be using Lightning Bolt. And that's another filler ability. And once you get some legendaries, it'll get even more full. But yeah, that's what you want to be using. So if I do the rotation now, I'm going to be, using my melee abilities, Crash, Lava Lash. Now I need to be using my Maelstrom weapon, Storm Strike, Lightning Bolt to use that. Now all my melee abilities are on cooldown and my casts are not up there yet. I would use a Frost Shock. Now my melee abilities are back, and it's all cooldown based now, which is a big change from Enhance before. Enhance before was buffing yourself, trying to fish for Storm Strikes, as that would just do a ton of damage. Now we're much more about doing the rotation of casted spells when I have the Maelstrom stacks, using my melee buttons first, and then my fillers on my shocks. Now, if I was going to do an AoE, let me show you what that could look like, and I'll go to Hailstorm. You'll immediately notice that my rotation, things will get a little bit slower now, because I took off some of my haste stuff, right? And because I don't have this Maelstrom generation from Elemental Assault. So let's go ahead and go in the same way. Let's put down Wind Fury Totem. I'm going to go in, and I'm going to start using this, right? I'm going to see if I can cleave these, right? Yep, here we go. I'm cleaving. Now what I want to do is I want to spend my Maelstrom weapons on Chain Lightning. And when I do that, you can see I got Hailstorm, increasing that Frost Shock damage, using it. And then I also got Crash Lightning is buffed by 40. It can get up to 60 with 3 targets. Then I use my Crash Lightning. My Storm Strikes are now buffed, because every time you use Crash Lightning, you can do cleave in front of you, as well as making your Storm Strikes, look at this, Storm Strike damage increased by 10% because I hit 2 mobs. So that's how you want to do that between your casted and your Crash Lightning. Now again, I need to be using these Hailstorms on the Frost Shocks, right? So that's what you want to keep doing. So again, that's the rotation for using Hailstorm. It feels a little bit slower. Like you'll see, you will run out of globals to press when you hit max level. But what you should be doing in those free globals, reapplying Wind Fury, reapplying your Flame Shock or pressing Frost Shock, using your Wolves, dropping Healing Stream. These are all options to do to fill the rotation out a little bit, but you'll probably be a little bit GCD you'll have some GCDs available, and you need to figure out ways to keep kind of the ball rolling. Whether that's putting down a slow totem even, or a cap totem, whatever it is, you might have that for a little bit until you get more optimized gear and you get the legendaries you need. So with that being said, guys, that's all I wanted to go over with you. I kind of took you through all the changes, and I know this is a little bit more of a, I guess I'm always talking in the videos, but a little bit more of a, kind of just going through everything kind of in more minute details, because I want to let you guys know, if you're thinking about going Enhanced Shaman, this is what you need to know. This is how you play the class in a way that you can start to do it in the correct way. Maybe not the optimal way yet, but in a way that you can explore the class and get a sense. Maybe it's a class you want to play in Shadowlands. Maybe it's not. But either way, let me know what you think down below in the comments. I would love to know what you think. And if you haven't yet, please come by the stream. If you have any questions or have any builds you'd love me to try, let me know. And if you do like this content, definitely click that sub button, hit that like button, and I appreciate all the support, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Enjoy pre-patch. Get ready for Shadowlands.